Welcome everyone. I'm Sumesh Balakrishnan from the Enterprise Manager Product Management team, and joining with me is Desiree Abrokwa from the Product Management team. In today's session, we'll be exploring the new REST APIs that have been introduced in the recent release updates of Enterprise Manager. These APIs offer powerful capabilities for automating target, user, metrics, and incident management in Enterprise Manager. Let's dive into the details and understand how these APIs can streamline your operations and enhance your efficiency. This is the agenda for today's session. The first item on our agenda is to review the automation requirements in Enterprise Manager. Here, we will explore the challenges faced by administrators in managing target, metrics, incident, and user, and the need to automate to streamline these processes. Next, we will dive into an overview of REST APIs. Here, we will discuss the key features and functionalities of these APIs and explore how they can be integrated into your existing automation tools and workflows. Next, we will focus on various APIs available for user, roles, and credential management. Here, we will discuss how these APIs can simplify the task, such as creating users, granting roles and privileges, and managing user credentials through automation. Following that, we will review some of the APIs in target, metrics, and incident management. We will also explore how these APIs can enable administrators to automate tasks such as adding or removing targets, modifying target properties, retrieving metrics data, and managing incidents effectively. Finally, we will dwell into a practical use case that demonstrates how these APIs can put into action for your daily task in Enterprise Manager. We will explore the power of REST APIs in maximizing the efficiency and automation of your infrastructure, monitoring, and management within the DevOps pipeline. By leveraging the Enterprise Manager's REST API, you can streamline your process, save time, and enhance overall productivity. One of the key benefits of utilizing the Enterprise Manager REST APIs is the ability to seamlessly integrate them into your DevOps pipeline. These API provide a standard and reliable interface for interacting with Enterprise Manager, allowing you to automate various management and monitoring tasks. Here, we will focus on two important aspects. The first one is on user, role, and credential management, as well as target, metrics, and incident management. These APIs enable you to efficiently handle these operations with minimal human interaction, reducing manual efforts and potential errors. It is also worth mentioning that these APIs operate based on JSON, making it easy to work. Additionally, using tools such as curl and communicating over HTTPS ensures a secure and reliable connection between your automation tools and Enterprise Manager. So here, we will explore the extensive capabilities of Enterprise Manager's REST API and how they can be leveraged for end-to-end automation in your environment. Whether you prefer the comprehensive interface of Enterprise Manager or have existing DevOps tools like Ansible, Puppet, or Terraform, these REST APIs can provide flexibility to meet your specific requirements. Depending on your preference and practice in your environment, you can choose to leverage either the native interface of Enterprise Manager or integrate the REST APIs into your DevOps tools. And if you already have tools like Ansible, Puppet, or Terraform in your environment, you can seamlessly call these REST APIs to perform management operations. By utilizing DevOps tools and calling them into Enterprise Manager's REST APIs, you can automate end-to-end management operations with ease. This allows for greater efficiency, consistency, and scalability in your environment. The integration of REST API in Enterprise Manager provides a powerful solution to manage targets, incident, retrieve metrics, and perform user credential management tasks. REST API offers a flexible and scalable way to automate many manual processes in Enterprise Manager. Enterprise Manager Platform REST APIs are grouped into 4 different categories. So the first one is target management. Second one is user and credential management. And third one is metrics. And finally, the incidents and events management. So talking about the first targets and target properties, under this, you will see REST APIs for list global target properties, create new target, modify existing target, get target properties, and then delete target. Under the user and credential management, you can see creating the user and granting the user with required roles and privileges, deleting the user from Enterprise Manager, listing all users in Enterprise Manager, creating new name credentials, and listing name credentials. And then in the metrics area, we have APIs for getting the list of latest metric value for a target in the group, metric group details of a target. And finally, in the incidents and events, we have APIs for getting the list of incidents detail, get event details, clear an incident, suppress and unsuppress incidents. In the next few slides, we will walk through on all these APIs in detail, and we'll take a couple of examples to show you in more details on how these APIs you can put into your automation tools. And with this, let me transition to Desiree to talk about the additional APIs that we have introduced in Enterprise Manager.
Additionally, we want to highlight some high availability APIs, fast start failover APIs, and recovery appliance management APIs. In general, a fast start failover allows a broker, which is a data guard management utility, to automatically fail over to a previously chosen standby database in the event of loss of the primary database. The fast start failover APIs contain operations for a fast start failover configuration, such as enable fast start failover, disable fast start failover, and stop the observer, and more. The recovery appliance management APIs have many APIs for managing recovery appliance protected databases, such as add protected databases, create protection policies, and more. To begin with, let's look at the target and target properties APIs. Here we have a series of get, post, delete, and put tasks. For example, we have a get for getting target properties, post to create a new target, delete to delete the target with a given ID, and a put to modify an existing target. For events and incident, we support get and post commands, such as for get to get details of an event and get a list of incidents, and for post to clear an incident. Lastly, for metrics, we support get methods for the following: getting data points for numeric metrics over time, getting metric groups for the target, getting metric group details for a target, and getting the latest values for the metrics in the group.
So here, let's look into the APIs for users and roles management. Here are the list of operations you can perform by leveraging the REST APIs. As a summary, you can see that using APIs, you can create a new user in Enterprise Manager, create a new role, get the details of user and role in Enterprise Manager, list user and privileges and roles granted, list of roles granted to the user, and also a list of roles granted to a role. And then you can use API to modify a user and a role. And eventually you can also use the API to delete user and delete role. And then in the credential management APIs, you can use API to create a new name credentials, test name credentials, and also you can list name credentials, and then you can also delete the name credentials. And then finally, you can also use the API to update an existing name credentials. So here we will show you an example use case on how you can stitch all these API into action for your Enterprise Manager automation. In this flow, we will see how to use this API first to create the target and list target. Second, how to create a new user. Third, how to grant roles and privileges to this user. And then how to create the name credentials. And once the name credential is created, how to test the name credential to ensure the name credential is all successful. And then finally, we will look into the metrics, like we will modify the metric threshold for a target, and we will review the incident, and then we will list all the incidents raised for this target.
Let's first review the target and target properties management APIs. Let's begin our use case with creating and listing targets. For our scenario, we are interested in creating an Oracle database instance target. Before doing so, we will need to get the sample payload to use to create this target. With EM REST APIs, there is an operation to get the create sample payloads for a target type, which we will need in order to create the database instance target. The API is a get operation and has a URI path of EM API, target types, type, and target create samples. To get the correct sample, we could additionally add query parameters which specify the agent which will host a new target, or specify the target ID of an existing target, or finally, you could specify the name of an existing target of that type. On the right is a sample payload for an Oracle database target. In this, you can specify criteria for your target, such as target name, credentials, and target version. Notice that in this response, the sample also instructs where to edit your own target. Please note, the currently supported target types for this operation is cluster database, Oracle database, Oracle listener, and rack database. Now that we have received the sample payload from the last operation, we can now go through the process to create a new target. For this use case, remember we want to create a database instance. This is done through a post operation with the URI path as EM API targets. On the left, I edited the sample payload from the last step in order to specify criteria to create my database instance target. I input variables such as the target name, which is Oracle CDB 21, target type of Oracle database, time zone of GMT, and further target properties. On the right is the response. From the payload and completing the last operation, the response displays a 200 OK status and shows the target that was just created with the properties that I previously specified. Now we can continue and list all the targets in our environment from this get operation to further confirm our target has been created. Once we do so, notice the highlighted section on the right. This is the target we created, and it is now added to the all targets list. With this operation, you also have the option to filter for targets with specific criteria such as the target type, target name, and more.
So now let me show you the APIs in users and credential management. So as the first step in this use case, let's review the APIs for creating a new user in Enterprise Manager. Even before we create the new user in Enterprise Manager, let's first get the list of users in Enterprise Manager. So we will execute the get call to list the active users in Enterprise Manager. So the get method in the URI has the em/API/users. So you can see this is a response from the get operation with the status 200 status code. And this lists all the active users in Enterprise Manager. Here we will see how to create a new user. So we will be using the post operation with the same URI with em/API/users. And this is a sample payload where I'm creating the new user called Cyrus_TechAdmin with the initial role as EMAll administrator. And this is the payload, sample payload. And when I do a post operation, you can see the status code as 201, which shows that the user got created in Enterprise Manager. So here is just a quick validation to show you that even though we created using REST, I'm just going into the administrator's page to show that this user actually exists, that is created using REST API, and all these are the user details. As the next action in this use case, we will go over the API to see how to grant roles and privileges to this new user, Cyrus Tech Admin. Before we get into the API for granting the new roles to this user, let me check the current roles granted to this user. To list the roles granted to this user, we will use the get operation, and in the URI, we will use the em/API/users, and we will use the user ID of the created user and then the role grants. Here, you will see the output of the get operation listing the roles granted to this user, Cyrus Tech Admin. And here in the get URI, we pass the user ID to list the role grants. So this is just the get URL where the user ID is passed to get the list of roles assigned to this user. In this one, we will add additional role called EMAll operator to the Cyrus Tech Admin user. For this, we will use the put operation. In the put URI, you will see we have used the role ID and the grant to grant that role to the user. So this is a sample payload, the put operation, and then you can see the response code, which is showing status 200. That means this EMAll operator role has been granted to the Cyrus Tech Admin. Here again, we are doing the get operation to list all the roles granted to this user, and hence in the get URI, we are passing the user ID. And by passing the user ID, you can see that initially the Cyrus Tech Admin had EMAll administrator. Now we have also, now you can also see the additional role called EMAll operator has been assigned to or has been granted to this user. So here we will do additional grant additional privileges. So the payload for this will be passing the create credential, view any target, and create job are the additional privileges that we are going to grant to the Cyrus Tech Admin, and we use the put operation to pass this payload. So by using this put operation with the payload, you can see that the additional privileges are being granted to the Cyrus Tech Admin. And in the URI, we are passing the user ID so that all these additional privileges can be assigned to this user, which is Cyrus Tech Admin. In the previous operation, we have granted additional privileges to the user, and here we are listing the overall privileges available to this user. So we use the get operation, and again in the URI, we pass the user ID to get the list of privileges granted to this user. And here you can see whatever the additional privileges we granted, it's all reflecting for this user. So now that we have seen the user creation and granting the roles and privileges to the user, now let's move on to the name credential API. And we will see how to create a new name credential. Here for the name credential, we are going to create a specific instance-specific name credential for target type Oracle_PDB. We will use the post operation to create the name credential. Here is the payload, and you can see the response with status code that this name credential got successfully created in the system. So this is a sample payload where I'm using the database username and password and giving the role. And here you can see the name credential got created successfully, and Cyrus Tech Admin is the owner of this name credential. So in the next slide, here will verify the name credential by going into the security name credentials page. And here you can see that the same name credential exists, which is owned by the Cyrus Tech Admin user. So now that we have created the name credentials, let's go and do the test operation to see whether the actual created name credential works even before we use it in any of our automations. So for testing the name credential, we use the post operation, and in the URI, we pass the name credential ID, and then with actions/test. So by passing the post operation with the name credential ID, you can actually test the name credential, and here you can see the return status code as 204, which shows that the name credential is successfully validated, and we can use it in our workflows in EM. So with that, let me turn to Desiree to talk about the metrics and the incidents API.
We will review metric APIs that can help track a metric threshold violation. We have a get operation to get metric groups for a target. This operation lists all the metric groups of the specified target ordered by metric group name. When include equals metrics is specified, it includes details of the metrics in the group. On the right is the response. Note, this image only shows a portion of the metric groups for our database instance target. We are interested in the dump area metric group that is highlighted. Take note of this metric group name as we will need it for upcoming operations. Now that we have selected a metric group that we are interested in, let's take a closer look at it. Remember that the previous operation returned metric group names. From there, you can use the metric group name that we found in this operation to get the specified metric group details and its metrics for the target. The URI path for this is target ID, metric groups, metric group name. In our case, we are interested in the dump area metric group. On the right is the response of querying for the dump area metric group details. This metric group has metrics such as dump area directory, percentage of dump area used, and kilobyte of dump area used. For my use case, I specifically want to review the metric for a percentage of dump area used. This will come handy for our next operation. We can review a specific metric in more detail using the get operation for getting data points for a numeric metric over time. To use this, we have query parameters that must be specified, such as metric group name, target ID, and the time range for the metric to be collected. Remember our previous operations, get metric groups for the target and get metric group details for a target, allowed us to get a metric group name and metric name for our database instance target. The information gained from those operations can then be used for some of these required query parameters in order to get the data points for the metric we are interested in. On the image on the right, you can receive the response to the query. We have queried for the percentage of dump area used, and shown in the image are the data points for the metric based on a specified time range. Notice the data points indicate the dump area percentage is at 98%. However, I already know that my critical threshold for dump area is set at 95%, which means that the current value point is over the critical threshold. Let's move into how this looks in the console. At the top of the screen, notice the statistics behind the metric that was collected. This metric has a warning threshold of 85 and a critical threshold of 95. However, the last known value of the metric is at 98, which was shown from the last operation and also shown here in the UI, meaning that the metric has passed the critical threshold. This results in a metric threshold violation and creates an incident, which leads us to our next operation. Let's move to the incidents and events part of the story. Now that an incident has been raised because of the metric threshold violation, let's get a list of incidents. Here is a get operation to get a list of incidents. This operation returns a list of incidents based on the filter specified, which can include target name, target type, severity, and more. By default, it returns the first set of all open incidents with the most recently created incidents listed first. On the right is the incident details from the previous metric threshold violation. Here, you can see the incident message lists that 98% of background dump area is used. It also specifies the target that was affected, the time the incident was created, if it is open and acknowledged, and more. This is also directly reflected in the UI. To access the incident, you can navigate to the Incident Manager UI, where it will have a list of all open incidents. Here is our incident selected, where you can see the same incident details as the API response that was previously displayed. To summarize, REST APIs offer a flexible and scalable way to automate many manual processes in Enterprise Manager, such as to manage targets and incidents, retrieve metrics, perform user management tasks in an efficient and automated manner, and more. Platform APIs currently available include credentials management APIs, metrics, incidents and events, target type, target, global target properties, and user management. Thanks for joining our session, New REST APIs to Automate Management of Targets, Metrics, Users, Roles, and More. To learn more, please refer to our Enterprise Manager REST documentation and these additional resources.